Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I'd like to welcome you to Shanti's yin class with a focus on hips. Sydney's going to join me as well today. And I invite you to start in a comfortable seated position. You might want to prop your hips up on a bolster if that's more comfortable for you. We're just going to take a minute to settle in. Letting go of everything that you've done today, everything that's happened outside your place of practice, the traffic, the conversations, just letting that all go, almost as if you're taking off a winter jacket and leaving it outside in the closet. Bringing your focus to your space, your mat. Your attention is right here, right now. As we settle in, bring your attention to your breath, noticing the wave-like action, the continual inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. And perhaps as you inhale, you think, I smile. And as you exhale, I'm calm. Inhaling, I smile. Exhaling, I'm calm. It's from Thich Nhat Hanh. But using that rhythm, that attention to our breath, can be a very useful anchor to help us stay present. Yin has some quiet spaces during the class, so it can be very normal to find our mind wandering, particularly if we're thinking about a body part that's a little tight or a little uncomfortable. And just returning our attention to our breath can be a very helpful way of gently recentering ourselves. So 3 more breath cycles. And if your eyes are closed, gently bring them open. Gently open them. And we'll be moving into our first pose, which is child's pose today. So I'm going to invite you to come onto your mat on your, sitting back on your heels. And for the first child's pose, I'd like you to have your knees together rather than wide apart. They don't have to be touching. You want to be comfortable during this position, but bring your knees together as close as is comfortable. And then slowly release yourself forward, just letting your spine curve as you reach your head and chest towards your mat. Your arms can be forward, but if this causes shoulder discomfort, your arms can be back. And let yourself just release, letting gravity exert some gentle force on your spine. Many people find it comfortable to use a bolster to reach their forehead down to. And if your bottom doesn't come all the way to your shins, sometimes using a blanket in between can help as well. Perhaps returning to your breath here. take one more breath cycle. And then using your hands, gently push yourself back up to a vertical position. You're still on your knees. And for a transition, you can either simply rest here for about 30 seconds, letting the posture, the effects of child's pose settle in your body. If you prefer a more active transition, you can plant your hands at the front of your mat, tuck your toes, lift your hips into a very gentle down dog. We'll be moving to our next pose, which is wide-legged. Actually, in yin it's called tadpole. In our flow classes, it's called wide-legged child's pose. So from a knee, come back down to a kneeling position if you're in down dog, with your heels, with your bottom down on your heels. Take your knees out to the sides of the mat. And again, you're just going to let yourself very gently fold forward. Again, using that bolster if needed to rest your chest on, or using a blanket between your thighs and calf if needed. If there is any sharp pain in your hips, please back off. Again, you're aiming for about 60 to 70% of your edge initially, settling in, and then give yourself permission to adjust if you need to. The time we spend in our yin poses allows gravity and time to work on the connective tissues deep within our hip joints and our spine. And so you may notice as we hold these poses, you may feel a little bit of shifting or release in either your hips or your spine. One more breath cycle. And bringing yourself back up to vertical and finding your transition either in down dog or kneeling on your heels. While you're in the transition pose, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we're going next. We're going to be doing shoelace, which it can be a pretty challenging pose for our hips, but there are endless variations. And so we're going to show you a couple of different ways to do this so that you can find what works exactly perfectly for you. So if you're in down dog, I'll have you come and meet me in a kneeling position. Let your hips fall down to the right side. And you're going to keep that bottom knee right there in front of you. And you're going to take the other foot and bring it towards that front knee. Now that foot can land on the inside of the knee. It can land in front of the knee. It can cross over. If you have a lot of flexibility in your hips, you may find that that foot keeps moving over and over to the side. Prop myself up on a bolster. But this is one version of shoelace. This is a very challenging asana for the hips. So other variations that you can try. Propping yourself up on a bolster can feel beautiful. Using blocks to support that bottom knee or even the top knee feels luscious. If the bottom knee is really hurting you, you can straighten it and maybe provide a little bit of support with a block that way. As you settle in here, gently, slowly, let yourself fall forward. If this just is absolutely uncomfortable on your hips, you can unwind your legs a bit and find either a gentle cross-legged position, or you can do what they call an untied shoelace, where your legs are crossed but everything is very loose, and then fall forward. No sharp pains. If you have sharp pains, back off. A little bit of slight discomfort as you begin a yin pose can be a sign that there is some healthy tension and compression going on in the connective tissue. Breathe and let yourself release. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I'm calm. One more breath cycle. Placing your hands on the ground and gently pushing yourself back up. You'll unfold your legs, bringing them kind of into a wide V, and then just very gentle windshield wiper. And we'll move to doing this on the other side. So letting your knees this time fall to the left, and it's that left knee now that will remain fixed as the opposite foot comes around, landing on the inside of the knee, the outside of the knee. Again, using your props, perhaps straightening that bottom leg, finding what works for you. And then releasing, chin to chest, shoulders roll forward, folding forward, folding inward. Again, allowing yourself to feel the sensations, noticing, observing, and returning to your breath. One more breath cycle. Breathing in and breathing out. And then palms on the floor, gently rolling yourself back up to vertical and unfolding your legs. Gentle V or wide legs, and just gently roll side to side. We're going to transition now to hands and knees position, so move slowly. Hands are placed underneath the shoulders, knees are underneath the hips. We're going to be moving to sleeping swan. In flow classes, this is called pigeon. You'll take your right knee, bring it up towards your right wrist. Take your right foot, moving it towards your left side of your mat. Tuck your back toes and slowly move that back knee back. And then, if you have space, allow yourself to slowly fold forward. Now, if you're pregnant or you have knee problems, I'm going to show you an alternative. If you're doing sleeping swan, some people love to go down on a bolster, go down on your elbows. You can use a bolster or a block behind your hip. But again, we're aiming for about 60% of edge. If you're pregnant or have had knee issues, you definitely don't want to do sleeping swan. That can put a lot of pressure on certain body parts. And I'll recommend a sitting position for thread the needle. Where you're sitting with your knees bent in front of you, you take your right foot across your left knee, feeling a nice, gentle pressure in your hip. And returning to your breath. One more breath cycle. And then slowly pushing yourself back. Taking that front knee back and finding yourself back in tabletop. And either resting here for a few breath cycles or stretching it back out into a gentle down dog. Coming back into table. We'll be doing the same thing, but this time the left knee comes up towards the left wrist. Foot wraps around to the right side of the mat. Your right knee wiggles itself backwards. And using props as needed to support that hip. And letting yourself fall forward. This is called pigeon in our flow classes. Call it sleeping swan in yin. The yin postures have different names, even though they look the same. They have different names to remind us that we're using our bodies differently. In flow classes, we're often engaging our muscles, looking for a good stretch in our muscles. In yin, we're relaxing our muscles and letting gravity and time work their magic as we hold these poses on the connective tissues in our joints. Noticing the sensations, noticing how this side might be different than the other. And returning to your breath. One more breath cycle. And then gently push yourself back up, taking that front knee back, finding yourself in table, either resting there or moving to down dog for a transition. You're in down dog, coming back down to table, and then letting your hips fall down to the ground with your legs extended in front of you. We're going to be moving to caterpillar, which is more of a, there's more focus on our spine here than our hips, but there's still a little bit of hip work going on. In caterpillar, you're just gently going to let your chin come down to your chest. You're going to let your shoulders roll forward as you introduce a little bit of a falling forward sensation in your spine. And you may notice your hands coming down your shins as your head falls towards your knees. You can also put a bolster underneath your knees. Simply do it with your knees bent with no bolster. And find your 60 to 70% and let yourself fold. This is similar to the last pose. We're used to doing forward folds in flow. In yin, we're not engaging our muscles. We're not reaching our maximum at the beginning of the pose. We're just aiming for 60 to 70%. And then melting, letting gravity do its work on those joints. Sometimes with the quiet spaces in yin, our minds can wander. Perfectly normal, perfectly okay. It's a wonderful opportunity to just go, interesting. And allow yourself to be curious about what happens during these quiet spaces. One more breath cycle, and then gently pushing yourself back up to a vertical position, removing your props, and finding your way back into hands and knees for transition. And here, again, you can wiggle your spine whichever way it wants to move. You can quickly settle back into a child's pose stretch or a down dog. Also find to be perfectly still. We're going to move to dragon, which is a classic yin pose. For this, you're going to bring your right knee forward towards your right wrist, but then you're going to walk your right foot forward so that it's between your hands. It's not directly in front of your left knee. It's more like they're parallel on railroad tracks. And now you're going to take that left knee and move it backwards. You might tuck your back toes, but take that left knee back So you'll feel it in, well, you're going to feel it in many different places. And settle in here. If a couple of variations, if you got shorter arms like me, you may find it helpful to prop yourself up on blocks. Another variation, if you'd like a little bit more energy in this pose, is to bring both hands to the inside of your foot and move that front foot out a little bit more, and perhaps even let that knee fall. And as you settle into this pose, you may find, as your hips begin to release, that you're able to bring, or want to bring, your elbows down, either to blocks or the floor. Everybody's dragon is going to look a little bit different here. One more breath cycle. Pressing yourself back up, taking that front foot back, placing the knees together, finding yourself in tabletop and either remaining here or gently pushing back into down dog. Couple breath cycles. And then we'll move to dragon on the other side. This time bringing your left knee, left foot forward, taking that right knee and pressing it backward. Your front knee should be directly above the ankle. You don't want it reaching forward in front of your toes. Perhaps moving both hands to the inside of that foot and releasing. One more breath cycle. And coming out of the pose, pressing yourself up with your hands, taking that front foot back, and either pressing back to down dog or sinking your hips back into child's pose. From here, coming down to a seated position and slowly finding your way to your final Shavasana. Shavasana in Yin is very similar to Shavasana flow class, finding your most comfortable, luscious place of rest, maybe on your back, on your side, a bolster under your knees. Letting yourself simply rest as you integrate the practice into your being. Relaxing every part of your body, finding a silence and a calm in your body. And as you find that silence and calmness in your body, you may notice a silence or a calmness in your breath. And as we calm the body and the breath, sometimes there arises a deep calmness in the mind. Taking a slow, gentle breath in and a slow, gentle breath out. Beginning to bring some movement back to your body, perhaps beginning with your fingers, your toes, perhaps a gentle smile, rolling onto one side, slowly pushing yourself back up to a comfortable seated position. Taking your hands out to the side, reaching out, up, bringing everything from today's practice that you want to take forward with you to your center. Thank you for joining me with this for this class today. Hope you have a lovely day.